Hello and welcome to Iceland, but my name is Gylfi and I will be your guide today as we discover the village Vík, the home of one giant volcano and a little over 700 people. As usual, we start the journey on a map and zoom down to the south coast, all the way to this glacier that will play a major part in today's story. But let's start with some names. The full name of the village is Vík í Mýrdal, but we call it Vík. And Vík means a small bay inlet, and Mýrdalur means a swamp valley. So the name means a bay in a swampy valley or something like that. And the name of the glacier is Mýrdalsjökull or Swamp Valley Glacier. And under the glacier we have a giant volcano. So the whole mountain and the glacier is most often called Katla. But Katla means a kettle or a cauldron, and it is also a woman's name. And since we got the formalities out of the way, let's move on. But Vík is one of Iceland's best known tourist villages. It's located by the main ring road around our island, around 180 kilometers from Reykjavík, and it is the southernmost village in Iceland. The settlement was originally formed around a store that opened in the 1880s, and the first residents were local farmers who kept a part of their livestock around here. But this was never a strong fishery town. It always lacked a good fishing port, since the sandy beach didn't make it possible. So this is the only coastal town in Iceland that doesn't have a harbor. So during the fishery season, the farmers around took off to fishing stations further away. Egg picking was, however, a strong food source, and fulmars were hunted below those cliffs, just east from town. But that kind of hunting was, however, never a big industry in Iceland. It was only hunted here and in the nearby Westman Islands. So luckily, that fat bird is not a part of the traditional Icelandic food culture. But it is, however, still hunted around here, and it's usually salted or smoked. But it's more about tradition than business, of course, or to use what the land has always given. But sometimes the land just gave too much. And this is one of the most extreme parts of Iceland in so many ways. The land around here is marked by the Katla Volcano that has erupted every 40 to 80 years on average. But it's been over 100 years since the last eruption, and every now and then the volcano sends us clear warning signals in the form of earthquakes. And this remains as the most heavily guarded volcano in Iceland. And the reason is, of course, the proximity to the town, and wherever we look around by the roots of the volcano, we can see those forces from ancient floods. So when the next eruption breaks through the ice, it's all about location. The location determines the flood path, but that is where the risk is. We might get lucky, but we could also face a disaster. And the most common flood path is from the eastern side of the glacier. And 18 of those floods came down here, including the flood after the last eruption in 1918. That flood carried those huge chunks of ice down to the sandy coast east of town. And I do have a full documentary online about that event, and I'm linking to it, of course. But the scale of such events will change the land around here forever. And it was in fact the volcano Katla that gave us this sandy beach where the town is now. But nature takes as well. So sea erosion is a huge problem now. And if nothing will be done, the village will disappear into the ocean by time. But we won't let that happen, of course. And Mother Nature might even take care of this problem for us with fresh sand from the next eruption. But in case of an eruption in Katla, there are in general two scenarios. The milder version would be a flood that would not reach the town due to the barriers on the coast between the village and the river. But the extreme version is a flood, flash flood, that will come crashing down to the ocean with such force that it would lead to a tsunami that could hit the town. But when will we see the next eruption? That is the biggest question. And this plot shows the number of earthquakes annually since 2009. And a note that it was in 2010 when the famous Eyjafjallajökull eruption occurred. But Katla is like 10 times bigger than its little brother, Eyjafjallajökull. And that eruption did actually start on a mountain ridge between those two volcanoes. But it was only a small eruption that went on for a short time, and we can categorize it as the forgotten eruption, since shortly after it came to an end, the main event started in the Eyjafjallajökull caldera. And looking at history, it's a known trend that Katla erupts shortly after its little brother. And this spike in earthquakes in 2011 got us worried for a while. And unexpectedly, a glacier flood came from under the east side of the glacier and swept away the old bridge over Iceland's highway number 1. And the ring road around Iceland was closed for days. Experts believe now that a small eruption might have caused that flood or an eruption that didn't make it through the ice. So due to that event, history and the statistics, I would think that a flood from the next eruption would come from the same place. At least it's where the heat has been lately. And even though many believe that the 2010 Eyjafjallajökull eruption was large, it simply wasn't. But we all remember what it did to air traffic. And back then, our former president found a reason to tell the world that
I think it is high time for European governments and airline authorities all over Europe and the world to start planning for the eventual Katla eruption.
And the Katla was behaving badly in 2016 and 2017 again. And we have also this annual thing around here, or earthquake spikes in September and October, or while it's less ice up there after the summer. But the thickness of the ice up there is up to 800 meters. So it's a lot of water that could come down. And it's really something to live in a place like this, I can tell you that. And a flood might also come down to the west from the town as well, or from under a glacier called Sólheimajökull. But it's just a glacier tongue from the ice cap over the volcano, and it's possible to drive up beside that glacier tongue and do a snowmobile tour over the glacier from where I shot this video. But it's a very strange feeling to be there, so close by those brutal forces. And as we move down by the glacier tongue, we find a hot spot for tourists, or where the flood might come and change the landscape forever, once again. So the story of Katla is larger than the town itself, and Netflix made a TV series recently built on a story that takes place in this village a week during an eruption in Katla. And due to how overdue the volcano is, the civil defense has evacuation drills every now and then. And there is this SMS warning system there that is able to send warnings to all tourists and residents in the region with short notice. But the worst case scenario is most likely a flash flood. And the town church might be the only building that could survive such an event. And I am actually rather surprised why literally all new buildings are situated down by the coast. But it doesn't stop the tourists from coming. And in fact, the town is today completely saturated with tourists. And the tourism industry, 750 villagers, get around 5,000 guests every day during high season. So the town has changed a lot during the past 10 years. We find new hotels all around, even a small shopping mall with one of the largest stores with outdoor clothing in Iceland. So in a way, this is no longer the typical Icelandic village. This is not the place to inhale Icelandic culture, but it is a fantastic central spot on the south coast, where we have very strong tourist spots all around. And I found a survey from 2018 showing that the visitors are mainly here for the nature and hiking, and that was what they liked the most about the village. So the options for tourists are mainly about nature. And I say for myself that as for photography or shooting videos, this is a kind of dreamland. It is so easy to find photo subjects wherever we look. But I can't say that I would like to live here. It's a bit too shaky for my taste. But I always love to drive through, do a detour up on the cliffs or down to the coast, which is by many considered to be the most beautiful coastline in Iceland. And finally, this is just one of my many episodes about my growing series about all Icelandic towns and villages. So please consider to subscribe if you want good tips for your upcoming journey to Iceland, or if you want to learn a bit more about my country. And in the links in the video description, you will find my online stores and other ways to support my work, as I'm sending you best regards from the volcano island, Iceland.